Well, it began with my inner guides and the angels came in and said that I needed to create a new workshop to extend beyond. They didn't say what it was. So I just started making a workshop, which I thought would be the next level. And we did one of those and we realized that this is not going to work. And it had to be altered. But between that time and more recently in March, or actually even prior to that time, some information had come into me that changed everything. Everything I knew. I mean, I knew it was true, but now it's proven to be true. So this was about the Birkeland currents and the plasma fields and what all this would mean for us as human beings. This was one of the things that I had been looking for my whole life. And so this was very important, and it was so important that I started to try to change where I was going in the first place to this new information. And basically, on the first time, it wasn't set up. I was going in like two directions at once. Now, on the second one we did, which was in August, we changed it all to so it was coherent, and the direction we were headed in was in one particular way, and so August and October were much better, but in that work there was one thing that had to be known and understand, and the entire world didn't know what it was, at least as far as we knew, because I sat with over 40 scientists and none of them knew what it was, but they were all down to that same one thing, was how does the heart take a spark, literally a spark made from a mechanical spark. They took calcium and magnesium and one other thing, I think it was phosphorus, and they made it made a little battery, one of the cells. It's the pacemaker cells in a certain region of the heart, and it makes that one little spark, and it makes that little spark. And that spark moves through 7 different chambers, and when it comes out, it's not just a little spark, it's huge amount of energy, enough energy of electricity to create this magnetic field that goes around our body, the biomagnetic field. Nobody knows how they do. Nobody can understand how that's possible because it breaks all the laws of mathematics and physics. Everything we know, that's not possible. But it had to be possible because the heart's doing it. And so all these people that are studying Birkeland currents and everything else are all trying to figure out how that is possible. From the time I first came here and they asked me to begin to teach, I had certain rules that I had to play by. And the rules were that I could not use any higher levels of consciousness whatsoever. I could only use human consciousness and nothing else. Because if I couldn't do it with human consciousness, how can somebody else do it? So we had to play by those rules. And so this has been an evolutionary step. I've learned certain things once I understand certain things, like the sacred geometry and how everything is based on that. That took 14 years of just studying that one thing. Once I understood how that ran through everything, then I knew the language that I could speak in order to begin to understand these other things. And so then the Merkaba came out of the sacred geometry, and we understood what that was. But at the time that that I received that, I didn't know what was coming in the future, and especially what I'm learning right now. And so they let that out, and they let that be absorbed into humanity, and it went around the world. But then later I discovered that the heart was an essential part of the Merkaba and was not talked about in the initial first 2 books. That's when the 3rd book came out, which was the Living in the Heart, and from that information, that's what the ATIH work all was developed out through that. And it's a combination of using sacred geometry and a lot of other things, we were able to come up with what that information was. Also, with the Ascended Masters, who were the people that developed that information in the first place, they were there helping me to understand what this was. But always from a human point of view. We have everything we need. We don't. If we didn't, we would never be able to get out of here. And so it's just as a truth that we are whole, complete, and perfect within ourselves. We just have to know how to rearrange things and see differently than we do now to be able to get into higher consciousness. So anyway, that unfolded, and ATIH works began to happen. And then that's when they said, no, there's still more. You have to understand more. And I'm going, okay, well, what is that? And I started doing the way to do, because it was beingness, from my way of seeing, it is beingness that is able to get one into these higher levels. That's still true. It isn't that wasn't true. It's just that in order to reach the specific information, exactly how do you do it, that wasn't clear enough. And so I was then brought into an energy field with lots and lots of mathematicians and scientists. And from there, I understood the new science that is coming out, which I didn't know existed. And after studying that since from March until now, in November of 2014, I understand that pretty well. I understand exactly what they're saying and what all the parameters are and everything else. But I also understand that the people these physicists and these mathematicians and everything, they all have one big problem. They cannot understand how the heart can take this little spark and bring it into this massive amount of energy, like we were just saying. And so they're all sitting there trying to figure out through mathematics and everything else how they do this. And I was too. I was going through all the various stages, and I knew where it was in. It was in the 7-color map of the toroidal field, that was the key. And I was convinced of that, and as it turns out now, as of today, I was exactly right. But there was another area of spirituality that I just found out 2 days ago that changes. I know how it works now. I understand it all. The missing piece is here. We don't have to look anywhere. We just have to integrate this into this, and we can do it. And so for the first time, I feel I have everything we need in one place. And now, and this is really also why we're changing the workshop back a little bit further, because I need this time. This is one of the things. I need this time a little bit more, so when I do present this, it will be whole and complete and done. And so at the moment, I'm so excited I can hardly sit here in this chair, because I just learned this. And what I learned just a couple days ago, I can't tell you, because there's no reference point that you guys have to be able to understand what I'm talking about. But you will. And when you understand the Birkeland currents and the plasma fields and how we can go, that the entire universe is connected right now with electricity and communication, and something that no one ever knew was true, that is a big piece. But there is the final piece, is how does a person actually make that connection to all life everywhere? Okay, we got it. We just have to integrate it into the human body, and we know how to do it. And so this is what this new workshop is going to be. And because of this, I'm going to change the name. The name of beingness, the way to do is to be. The essence of what is in there is still true. But to be more accurate in this, we're going to call it cosmic grace. Because this is... this is something that has been held forever. Until we get to a certain level. And when we do, this cosmic grace comes in and makes it easy for us to make the transition. And so I don't believe this is going to be a hard thing. If we go through the ATIH work and we go through the ascension process, which is going through dimension by dimension by dimension until you get all the experience all the way through, takes a long time. If we do that, we can do that. It's a legitimate pathway. Over half of the ascended masters, that's how they became immortal. And so it's not, for some people, that may be easier, because it's, this other way is a lot harder, and you got to know a lot more, and you got to be able to get your body in a certain way to be able to, a certain level of strength and breathing power to be able to do these things. But now that we know this this other way, which is a third form of electricity that the whole world is looking for. And we can prove this. We can prove it scientifically, absolutely, because it's already been done. It just hasn't gone out to the world. This is amazing. To me, this is amazing, what I have just learned. And I can hardly wait to show you what this is, because when you realize what your heart is doing relative to the Merkaba and how these two things integrate, and it can integrate, I think you're going to get so excited you won't be able to stand it either, because you're going to know that you're going to be able to do this. And it's just a matter of practice and time, and it may take a couple months or 3 months or something. But this is not hard with what an ITH student or teacher knows now. With what we now know, it isn't a big step. It is just aligning a lot of things together, and you can actually connect to the entire universe. And when you do, from the person that I'm speaking to right now that has done this, basically you speak directly with God, with all life everywhere, everything. And it's very personal. Now, I know Christians and people can do this where they're speaking with God, and it may be real. But that's not easy for not very few people can actually do that either. This is a specific pathway. If you do this and this and this and this and this, this is what's going to happen. And so it's a male pathway. The female pathway is just speaking straight to God. But when you combine these things together, almost anybody can do this. And not just certain people or certain saints or someone that has been in a cave for 45 years or something. This could be, we could take somebody off the street that doesn't know much, and with a training, they can be able to go into these higher levels. And I've never been so confident ever as I am right now at this moment because of what I've learned.
So say a person just discovers you off the street and they want to do work with you. They want to do this new work, but you're saying you must know these other things first.
Well, when we did the very first one in June, there were 12, 13, 14 people there that didn't have ATIH information. And all of those people had problems, every one of them. And that I saw anyway. Maybe I skipped one or two, but they all, the main group of them, had real problems with doing this because they didn't know how to get into their heart. They didn't even know what that meant, and they didn't know how to breathe and so many things. They just didn't have the proper information, and so they weren't able to do this. As soon as we got into an entire group that had the ATIH information, it was easy, it was simple, it was beautiful. And it all flowed very, very well. Though we still didn't know, even at that time, that last little point that I've just learned. And so someone doesn't have to actually know, just so for you in the ATIH work, you don't actually have to know how the beams of light works. You really only need to know how to be in the tiny space of the heart and know all the geometry of the Merkaba. That's also essential. But this is not ascension that we're talking about here. This is direct connection to all life everywhere. This is skipping all 144, instead of going through all 144 dimensional levels, you just go from 1 to 144 and you're just up there already. It just skips. I've only learned how to do this 2 days ago, so I haven't actually done it yet. But I know I will be able to, and I know anyone that comes to this class will also be able to. But what the actual experience is going to be quite amazing, I think, because I know that you're going to have to twist and turn through 7 different major dimensional levels. And so what that experience is, of actually making that connection, I don't know that yet. I can only guess. But once we do it, and I'm going to interview this person that I just learned this final step with through, and he has done this. And so I think from having that experience with what he has done, I can, I don't have to do that, but I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I want to meet him. This guy deserves incredible recognition. He really does, for what he has learned. This is ultimately a very, very high stage that there's only maybe 400 people in the world that are in that state right now. And they're just sitting there dreaming that somebody like me or this other guy will actually do it so that it can go out into the world. So, because those guys have to stay where they are to maintain the world, or we can't continue. And so there are people that have been planted into this world. I'm not the only one. There's quite a few to aiming for this one particular moment in history. This will be the biggest moment in history ever. It makes everything else, like atomic bombs and everything else, look like meaningless. They're just meaningless. This is another stage. And I think that once it is seen and people are on TV showing it and everything else, that this is going to just explode. I was reluctant to say that when this could happen or it couldn't happen, because I didn't know how long it was going to take. It would be, I knew I had a lot of help, but I didn't know when it was going to be. But they just pushed this right in really quickly. And so, and when anybody out there sees the mathematics of what this is and how it works, without saying a word, they're going to be 100% convinced of this. They will see, once you see it, you can't deny it. It's total fact. And then you see what happens is in the human heart is that when it makes that little spark, it goes through a series of 8 breaths. Actually 7 that leads up to it. And each one of these breaths, if you bring in a spark of electricity, that spark on the second breath doubles to two times, double the amount of energy. And then when you go to the next breath, it doubles again to 4 times, 4 parts. There's a difference between timing numbers and actually doubling. And it doubles again. And then it goes to 8, then it goes to 16, then to 32, then to 64 in one cycle. So the amount of energy you put in there in one breath jumps up 64 times as much energy as it started out. And that produces this huge amount of electricity that creates this magnetic field. But you can run it more times around, and you can run it into the trillions. So a single spark makes enough energy to power a ship to go across the universe if they wanted to do something like that, or anything you can think of. And this is how it works, because you see, one of the things that scientists all over the world have been curious about from the beginning is when they discovered the atom. And you have the proton and the neutron in there, and then you have this little tiny electrical atom rotating around the outside. For 13.4 billion years, where did it get its energy? How did that happen? How is it possible that matter can even exist? Because that electron just keeps running and running and running and running and never runs out. It's getting energy from somewhere. And now we know exactly where it's getting its energy. And that's been proven in science now, and science knows what I'm talking about. That this person has proven this as the way that the electron is able to generate enough energy to continue on forever. And that's how the heart continues on forever also. So what happens is there's a pattern that the energy moves through. It's not an obvious pattern. You would never suspect it. And because of the way it moves in a strange way. But when it does, when it slips into that shape, when one electron moves into this pattern, It moves into superconductivity. It has no resistance whatsoever, zero. And with zero resistance, an electron can move forever. All it has to do is keep moving in that pattern. And that's exactly what the heart does, and that's what we have to do to connect to the universe. Exactly the same thing. And once you do it, you slip into that state, and you are then now, you're in an eternal state, just like the electron. You will never die. You will never end. You'll never quit. It just keeps going. And it doesn't have to just go one heartbeat either. And I've seen the mathematics going up to 10 trillion times stronger than the beginning. From 1 to 2 to 4, all the way to 10 trillion. And the mathematics are perfect. And so there's no reason to believe that it's going to end anywhere. And it doesn't. And if you remember, you guys that remember in the workshop, I showed this slide of the which was derived from the second book of the Flower of Life, which is the circle, and then and you go it from that. You pick a circle and you double it out. You go double the way out, and you go halfway in. And that was the ratio that's in there. And that is the ratio of how electron moves to be able to go into superconductivity. And it's also, when you just look at that, you could see how that pattern that goes throughout the universe everywhere, how it's just flawless, it's perfect. It goes inward forever and ever and ever, and it goes outward forever and ever and ever. And it is the golden mean that actually creates, that everything is established through. And this is exactly what the heart does. And this is exactly what a human being can also do. And at this moment, we have all of the information. We don't need anything else, that I believe at this moment. And I think that given 2 more months, I can demonstrate this in a way that we can really begin to teach this. It's easy, I believe. Once it's understood, I think that you could probably teach this to somebody, even though they don't it's like you can get in a very sophisticated car, and you can just give the person the key and say, okay, here's the brakes, here's the thing, here's this, and you can drive it, and not knowing any idea really how it works. There are certain things you got to know. You have to know how to get into the heart, and you're going to have to know what the pattern is and how to breathe in a certain kind of way. And that should, I believe at this point, it should, so you should be able to teach somebody this without really knowing a lot of information. And so the simplicity of it on that side is also very encouraging to me. Because if I had to teach somebody what we're going to teach in this workshop for every person, that would be hard. There wouldn't be very many people on the earth that would be able to really understand what I was saying. But if you could teach it, if you can get it down to the female part, not the male part, not all the angles and all that other stuff, but you get it down to, here's what you do, and you just breathe in this way, and you move in this kind of way, then that's where I think the female side will ultimately be what everybody is going to really need through all of this. But the secret part, the underlying mathematics, there are always going to be people that are going to want to know that, but definitely females don't need to know that. Once they see it works, oh, it works, okay, and all I do is this, they could just go straight for it. But they still have to know how to get into their heart, because if you're not in that position, that's it. I'll tell you, the secret was where this came from. Is something that it might be kind of shocking to a lot of people here in the thing, but this came from the Russians, from Gurdjieff, in the 1920s or 30s or somewhere a long time ago, and it's called the Enneagram. That is how the heart moves, but there are things about the Enneagram that no one on earth knows, hardly anyone. Because I've read almost everything that is known out there about the Enneagram and about Nicole and all these other people that have written about that, and no one knew what this one person knew.
Well, I'm sure come February you're going to have a whole lot of stories for us too.
Yeah.
With your experience, so it's wonderful. I'm so happy that this is kind of synthesized and you're so excited about this.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, I mean, I am excited. There's no doubt about it. I'm still excited about the Brooklyn currents and all that other stuff and what that means. But now now it's become personal. And that's where I was trying to bring it in. I'm going to bring it into the body. I mean, it's one thing to know science. Okay, that's cool. But what good does it do if you just make objects and things that work from it? How does it impact the human body? Our soul, how does it do that? And that's the part that I'm interested in. And this other person has proven it in science, flat out. And all we have to do is, and once you understand it, it's easy. So I hope that gets you guys excited too, and you want to come to this, and because you're going to be glad that you did. Okay, so thank you, Diane, and thank you all you ATIH special people in the world. Thank you.